Welcome back to the Rodeo Wagon podcast. Today we're here with Jorden Halvorsen.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's talking, throughout the week, and it's just cool, all the people you get to meet. And
right.
I've heard a lot about you with, through Vinny and obviously what you're doing with Dale and stuff, but to actually get to meet you is kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've been following all your stuff too for a while, ever since being with Vinny and Western Edge app and just all the things. So just to finally actually get to talk, it's cool.
And it's just funny because you see everything from a social media perspective and all of that, but the reality,
yeah,
it's just
well, and a lot of people, especially with that social media, when you talk about that, people also you want to be the same person that you put online, and I don't ever want to seem like I'm fake or anything like that, or there are been a lot of times where people have met me and been oh wow, you really are just the same person, you don't change. I was not really, I don't want to be that person either,
I think too, maybe in this Western or rodeo world, I feel like most people are that way,
right? Yeah.
There's less of the people that are just putting on a face for clicks. There's probably, they're out there, but I think it's maybe a little bit more genuine. I
feel like that's with anything, though. There's plenty of it everywhere you look, it's not, that will never go away.
Yeah.
And that'll never be just, there's never going to be just one that doesn't have it. I think it's going to be everywhere, but...
So you live in Texas now.
Mm-hmm.
So give us a little backstory behind what you were doing in North Carolina.
Yeah, that's where I was.
Cowboying, growing up, doing that. And now you're, obviously doing stuff with Dale on the ranch, but you're cowboying throughout the week.
So I grew up in North Carolina. I actually grew up riding hunter jumper horses. So I was riding English from the time that I was 8 till even really 18. And I didn't even find bull riding or really even was interested in rodeo until I was 17, and I really had just tried bull riding on a whim, a bucket list type thing. I was why would we do that, and I was riding hunter jumper horses. I was actually catch riding for a lady, which means that I didn't have a lot of money because I was a broke high school kid. My parents had gone through a divorce, stuff like that, so I was riding all these naughty horses and ponies for this lady and getting bucked off or whatever, and she had actually started dating a bull rider or was around some bull riders, and they had kind of mentioned hey, do you want to ride a bull? And I was why would we do that? And she was well, how many people do you know have ridden a bull? And I was well, just your boyfriend or your friends that we have just now met. And they were we can just do it one time, so we marked it off our bucket list. And I was okay, cool. I've been bucked off all your horses and ponies. What's another animal to get bucked off of? So we went and we tried bull riding, and I had kind of just instantly fallen in love. I had fallen off in 2.2 seconds, one jump out, nothing crazy. A little bull named Snowball. He's a little Charlet bull, gentle as could be. And so, I kept going back. They bucked every Sunday. I was down at Shady Acres in Hope Mills, North Carolina. I started going back every Sunday. I was I know I can ride this bull, and I wanted to get better at it for what I just was literally hooked into riding. And during this time, I was also trying to qualify my pony for pony finals, which takes place in Kentucky. And I had trained this pony when I was 9 years old, so I also had gotten bucked off of him a bunch. That was just kind of getting bucked off of horses was kind of second nature at this point for me. And so once I realized I wasn't going to be taking my pony to pony finals and I was riding bulls now on the Sundays, I just kind of went for it. I got on my first one when I was 17. Didn't really ride much until I turned 18 because you had to be 18 apparently to sign your own waiver. Kind of lied about that, but so after I decided that I wanted to ride bulls, I just went into working in I was just working for boarding facilities. I was just doing kind of just taking care of the horses, cleaning stalls, feeding, blanketing, just your very typical stable hand.
Yeah.
Kind of do everything, fix fence, all that kind of stuff. And started riding bulls more and more. I was finding more practice pens to go to, and I did that, for a long time. I rode bulls from I'd really say like 2013. Like I got on my first one in 2012. I really started riding bulls in 2013. I rode from 2013 to 2016 without even knowing that other women had ever rode bulls. Like, did not even know it existed. And I didn't even know it existed until 2016 when I was on Facebook and found, like, that they were looking to do a women's bull riding. So that's kind of how, in Texas at the Fort Worth Stock Show and Rodeo. And so I went to that, won it, and like had a blast, like spent like the whole week in Texas, like kind of my first trip away from like North Carolina on my own. Yeah. And then I started going back every weekend.
So you were hooked after that.
I was really hooked after that. And you know, I just kind of did the stable hand stuff and was riding bulls, and that's kind of what I was doing. And then like, you know, if you've been, you know, you've been in rodeo, and like you kind of see this other side of it, which is like the cowboy inside.
Yeah.
And like the like ranch inside of stuff, and that's what I had like slowly kind of like worked my interest into. Like I had always like, you know, thought cowboy and looked cool and stuff like that growing up, or you know, you always kind of have that cowboy. And one of the things that I did is like we had horses in our backyard at a young age, and I always rode bareback, and I always said I was riding like the Indian. That's what I would say to like my grandma and stuff. And you know, so like I had kind of had this like image of like cowboying from a young age, but I was so invested in riding and showing hunter jumper horses. And then when I started riding bulls and was riding more bulls consistently and seeing like the cowboying side of stuff, like I started to become more interested in that. And that's kind of how I found Dale Brisby and wanted to go work for him, because I wanted to learn the cow-calf operation side. Yeah. If you've ever been to North Carolina, there's not much of it. And it's not even that, but like the people that do it there don't even do it horseback hardly. There's only like so many people that do it horseback, but a lot of people do it by four-wheelers.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, out west is really where you're seeing the horseback.
Yeah.
About everywhere else, you know.
It's four-wheelers.
Yeah, it's four-wheelers.
You know, you run everything through a head
side-by-sides. And
they're not roping their calves and dragging them to a fight. Like, they're not having a real brand.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, and that was like stuff I wanted to learn. Like, I wanted to learn that, but like in North Carolina, like I didn't have any access to it. Like there's just, I mean, it's not there, like really. Or if it is, it's like a super small group, and it's like hard to get in with them guys, you know, like.
Yeah, man, it's interesting, like you talk about that, because you do have, you know, you go out west and it's you watch Yellowstone stuff, and that's like legitimately what happens, you know, coming together.
Work their cows.
Whereas, you know, in Missouri, you know, like you said, North Carolina, Illinois, it's not that way. Mm-mm. But it is fascinating within like the rodeo and stuff. And I think this is kind of the behind the scenes that a lot of people don't see is there's a tons of these guys that, you know, whether they're contractors or whatever, they'll have bunkhouses, and they'll have, you know, bull riders or bronc riders, and
come and stay.
They'll come and stay. It's free. They'll work and they'll go ride.
Yeah, and they'll get on bucking horses or bulls, or you know, and like that's what like we tell, you know, a lot of people that like don't get to come and work for maybe intern for Dale specifically, is we like go and find a stock contractor close to you. Yeah. Go find a rancher close to you. Offer to work for free in exchange for knowledge. Like, and like, you know, I had kind of, when I had applied to go intern for Dale, like I was just at a point in my life where like I'd just gotten hurt really bad. All I was doing was riding my horse. It was COVID. I mean, there was just really like I wasn't making any money, and like my thing is like, well, I'm just gonna go out. I mean, I debated for a week before I was gonna apply. I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna actually do this, but you know, like I was like, well, I'm not making any money here. Like, I should just go not make money in Texas and learn this new craft that I've kind of been in. Because, like, I had owned bucking bulls. Like, I had bucking shoots at my house. Like, I owned, like, a small herd of, like, bulls. I think I had, like, the most at one time was, like, 6.
Nice.
I mean, a couple two big steers and, like, some buckers. Like, I had this red muley that was pretty good. Yeah. And, you know, like, I was taking care of them. Like, I've been taking care of horses my whole life. But, like, as far as, like, roping goes or, like, working cow-calf, like, knowing the beef cattle industry, like, I didn't know anything about that.
Sure.
And so, like, I was like, well, I'm just going to go apply. But had I known that now, you know, about, like, going and just asking someone about, like, just working for free and, like, getting some knowledge, I probably would have, if I hadn't gotten on Dale's, I probably would have gone and done that and, like, started maybe started looking for it, even though there's not that much in North Carolina. Maybe I would have gone somewhere else. I lived in Wyoming for a little bit of time working on like a dude ranch, taking care of the horses, guiding.
What's the difference between that, like a dude ranch versus what you're doing, now?
Well, a dude ranch is like we were guiding trail rides.
Right,
like
sure.
The most we got to do, we got to go gather the horses every day that we needed them, like horseback, like they were out in these really big pastures and stuff like that. But we just dealt with horses.
Did you train those horses? Like, what did that look like? Because dude ranches, their turnovers. I mean, basically a lot of those dude ranches, I believe, are more, head to tail.
Yeah, and that's what they were doing. What we did was like what I was doing was riding a horse that they had gotten in.
Okay.
He was kind of a little spicy, like he was fresh, and so like I would ride him on the trail rides or ride him together just to kind of get him to where eventually like he could, head to tail in a trail ride and be calm, and he kind of would jig, like that's what like he was just kind of a jiggy horse, and like that's kind of what we did was we would ride the horses that just needed work and just kind of put them in that trail ride. And
what does that look like? So that, and then obviously working cowboying and training these horses and getting young horses, and the turnover, how many horses are you riding a day, that kind of stuff.
So like I only ride one horse a day. Like the other thing is like now they're in our program that I'm in now, like there's 8 of us guys, so like I don't want to be like I don't want to go and ride all the horses, and at Dale's it's like about what you put in is what you're going to get out. So I ride the same horse every day. I could ride any of the other horses there. But like when it comes down to it, like he's going to be the horse that I'm going to ride, I'm going to go to, or like if you're going to, it's so good for your bull riding, your bronc riding, to ride a horse, and so like he's just the horse that I go to. I've kind of created like a bond with him, and I've always been that weird horse girl, so like consistency has always been important in my life, and I just like riding the same horse. And he's bucked me off before, but sometimes he bucks a little bit, and which he's not bad. Like they're not. He's not super malicious about it, but like I just kind of ride him. But like everything we've got at the ranch right now is pretty much broke. But we do, like we go and gather the cows, and like we get to practice on all that kind of stuff. Like, like there's so much cowboy etiquette that people kind of don't know about. Like don't ride in front of someone else. Like, and you want to get to the gate before the boss. Kind of, and that's kind of like not really a rule, but like it's kind of one of those unspoken things like you kind of want to do. And like I didn't know any of that.
Yeah.
I know like and you kind of head to tail, like because we ride in a jig line, and that's kind of how they do it out in West Texas. But we ride in a jig line, and we go out, and then we get dropped off in the different spots and kind of make a wagon wheel and sweep that pasture to gather the cows. And I hadn't done any of that. Like I even think like when we would gather those horses out at that ranch in Wyoming, like that's not even how it was. I don't really remember it. That was a pretty rough time in my life, but like it was just like I've just learned so much about like how to gather them cows, just like taking care of them. Like we've had some cows get hurt that I've got to doctor, and like I don't know, there's just so much to it. Like
it's fascinating to me because I come from Missouri, and really my background, I started training when I was 12, 13.
Right.
So I developed into a decent horseman.
Right.
But I wasn't a cowboy, very blue collar, more of a redneck than I was a cowboy. Right. Big contrast, and in Missouri there's not just tons of great horsemen. Right. Lots of horses. Lots of horses, different way of doing it.
Right.
And it fascinates me, actually learning a little bit about that cowboy. Right. And like you even said, the etiquette, and for me, golfing, and I've been, Kenny, he started wanting to golf, and I'm like, well, you need to learn the etiquette,
right.
And just all these different subcultures and stuff, and probably depending on where you're at, in the country,
they're different. Well, the one thing about like some cowboy etiquette, or like really cowboy etiquette like that we've been taught, like if you go and you implement implement that at any ranch you go to, people are going to respect you.
Sure.
Because it's like, it is just like so well, like, I mean, it's just respectful. Like a lot of it is like when you don't ride in front of someone else, like say you're in the middle of a line, you've got everyone lined up and you're in the middle, like you're going to back your horse up and you're going to go behind everyone. You're not going to ride forward. Well, no matter where you go and you do that, like people aren't going to be mad about, you know, like even
Right.
if you didn't know, you're like, okay, that was kind of, you know, like he didn't just walk right in front of me, you know? So like stuff like that, you know, like it's kind of not, you know, like I didn't know that.
Right.
I mean, now I know. And I don't do it, but you know, like there's just so many unspoken, you know, with cowboy etiquette, and you know, people do things different everywhere you go, but like if you kind of follow that fundamentals, kind of like you do when you're riding a bull, you know, you can't really go wrong.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
It's kind of, so, but I've enjoyed it. You know, I've got to drag some calves now. Like we go to brandings, because that was one thing I always wanted to go to.
Was it branding?
Like, was a branding. Like I wanted to go to a branding and drag calves and learn like the different medicines you give them. Because like I'm really into that stuff too, like the vet care.
Okay.
Because like we've had like cows. We had a cow run through a fence and she sliced her whole chest open, like on her front leg, and like I doctored her through that. Like got her healthy. Like she's had calves now since then, and like, you know, just doing all that kind of stuff, you know, like I enjoy like the technical side of it, I guess you would say, like the vet care, like pulling horses through colic, like, you know, and just anything that has to do with the like vet or medicine of cow and, you know, horse, you know, like I wanted to learn or keep practicing, because like the horses I've done for a long time, like,
sure,
you know, a lot of that stuff I've been pretty solid in, but cows, like, you know, like where you give cows different medicines, or what you need to give them when they're acting this way, or, you know, just there's just so much, like, and you never stop learning. Like you learn something new every day, like, and that is very true, like 100% true.
Yeah, that's cool, and I mean, obviously getting to learn from people that are experienced in it,
right?
And how much of the interns that come in are from cowboy, you know, backgrounds,
like
or like you. So
I was probably the most. Me and there's another guy named Cole. We probably have been the most experienced interns that have come.
So is it Dale that is basically taught you guys all of this, or is it?
Yeah, most of it. I mean, like the cowboy and stuff, 100%. Like some of the horse care stuff, like I've been doing that since. I mean, that was my job before, and you know, like the cow stuff, 100%. Like there was like, you know, and like I work pretty close with one of the vets out there.
Okay.
Like I talked to her a bunch. My best friend growing up is a vet. Now she just she's been practicing for almost 2 years now.
Cool.
On her own, and so like I talk to her a bunch, you know, like I show her stuff, and you know, like he's taught us a bunch about like cowboying for sure. Like, and Cole came from like a cowboying background, so like he already kind of knew that stuff. He came for like the social media side of stuff, I would say.
Sure.
Like he's a good writer, like he writes a lot of scripts and stuff.
Oh, okay.
And so like he, you know, came for more of that aspect. The cowboying he already had down.
What a contrast.
Right. And like that's the other thing is like the newest intern we have, he's been on, you know, 100 bulls, you know, but is really struggling, and he wanted to come learn how to ride bulls and learn how to make content.
What are you guys doing on that side? So how often are you bucking and learning and on the rodeo side?
So we have these 2 little bulls that we'll buck every day.
Really?
Yeah, and that's it, you know, and like I said before, like it is about how much you want to put into it. Like if you want to get on first thing in the morning and get on that big steer we have, we'll buck the big steer, you know? Like we'll buck him before work. You get everything fed, get ready, we'll buck him. It takes 5 minutes start to finish, you know? So like it's really just about like how bad you want it, like, and how much you're willing. And we'll buck him in the evenings too. Like you get on him first thing. I mean, he's just a up and down, kind of like, it's just a live drop barrel. It's that live practice. And, you know, I think, like, that's really important in the very early stages of your career, you know, like, getting that fundamentals down, like, you know, slowing everything down to where you can ride them for the 8 seconds. You can practice your get off, you know, like to me, I wish someone would have told me to slow down.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier. I think it's a really big deal. Especially, I think it's harder for guys that are coming in that later in their life. I know I was 18. There's a lot of guys that start, or gals that start later. They're 17, 18, 19 before they get on their first bull, and you feel that need to really just hammer down and get on those
ranked bulls. Like give me that baddest one in the pen. Like no, dude. Hey, first off, you're gonna get dumped off right at the gate, and honestly, when you do that, like, and you have no experience, and you're getting on these, badass bucking bulls, you're gonna get dumped off at the gate for one. You're gonna put your latch man in a bad spot. You're gonna put your bullfighters in a bad spot, and you're gonna put that stock contractor in a bad spot because, like, I've seen it. I've actually flanked a bull, and I did not want to do it, but like we had one of those guys show up to the practice pen one time, and he was like, trying to say that he had rode in the PBR and he wanted our PBR bucking bull, and like looking at this guy, you're like, this guy's never even probably been on one a day in his life. And I was like, and I would have probably been a lot nicer. Right. And I was like, what? And they were like, the guys that run it were like, all right, we'll give you this bull. And he's a sure enough bucker, like sure enough, could almost be a short rounder at a PBR back in his heyday. Like this little bull buck. And I was like, are you sure? Like we could put him on one of these Charlets and it's going to dump him off just the same. Like this guy's never been on. And he was like, no, he said he wanted the baddest bucking bull. And I was like, God, are you sure? Like, do we want to do this?
Do we want to do this?
Do we want to do this? And they're like, yes. And I was like, all right, cool.
Yeah, we do. We want to watch this.
I might even still have the video. Well, they run this bull in, and this guy doesn't even slide up on his rope to knot. I'm like, oh no, this bull's going to be kicking over his head in the latch. Like, this bull's going to buck. And it's like, hey man, like, slide up on your rope. Sure enough, this bull, finally we got him slid up on his rope, and he's nodding, and this bull comes out, does his job, and snaps this guy's forearm, both bones in half. Bad. Like, his leg comes over, right there. And I was like, see, like, why do we have to do that? Like, this kid's now got to go to the hospital. Like, we could have put him on something way,
All right, but here's the other side. He asked for it.
He did ask for it.
And maybe now he has a really cool story that he's going to tell everybody for the rest of his life.
But also on the same side of the story is like, what happens if he had gotten killed doing that?
Yeah, no, for
That
sure.
is the other thing. Is 100%. Like this. It's lucky that he only broke his arm.
I think we're just so used to being in it.
Right.
Like people, it's hard to realize like how dangerous this sport is. Like there's been like, it's actually pretty wild. Like I know. Of guys that have watched a bull riding where a guy's head got stepped on and he bled out in the arena right there.
Right.
And, especially inexperienced riders like that are getting on bulls that are
just way over their head.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like earlier, I think it was this year. It might have been this year or last year. Did you hear about the little boy that died in King, North Carolina? He was young. Sure. He was 14 years old. This kid showed up to a rodeo in King. They bucked, anywhere from calves, steers, sheep. It's a zebra. And he had never been on a bull in his life. And he went and he entered. And I understand, like, I don't know if, like, I don't know the exact situation because I was not there.
Right.
But I know that this kid got on this big bull. And for a kid his age that have been on a bunch of bulls, like, this bull wasn't that bad. But he had never been on. And this bull come down and stepped on him, and he ended up passing away from it. And I don't know if people just didn't convince him out of it. I don't know. Or if they just let him be in the draw like normal, And it's one of those things, like, I wish someone, which I don't know if they did, but, like, I don't know if, like, someone just, like, was like, hey, man, like, this isn't a good idea. Or, like, they're like, hey, don't enter. We'll put you on this steer or something, like, never been on one. But he got on a big bull, and it just, the bull wasn't mean or anything, didn't, like, hook him or anything, but like, that's just how dangerous it is. And, it's going to happen. Like, you're going to have those instances and stuff like that. But that's why I think it's so important in the beginning that you are very slow about it. Like,
yeah, I agree.
That, and you mitigate risks, injuries and stuff like that 100%. That are going to hurt especially you later.
I'd say especially, but it is maybe even more for kids.
Right.
You know, a 14-year-old's body is not even built to handle.
Right.
You know,
a good stomping from a 1,400-pound bull.
If you're 26, your body's fully developed. It can handle quite a bit
Right.
more. But even that, like, you know, what you're saying, that development really needs to take place.
Mm-hmm.
And this sport really should be about skill development.
Yeah.
You know,
like,
and we should focus more on skill development and less on this cowboy,
yeah,
you know.
gotta toughen up and just get on that rank bull. And, you know, like, I got on some buckers when I first started.
Yeah.
Like, I gotten on some bulls that really bucked, and I got hurt doing it, you know, like, and I wish someone had just told me, like, hey, slow down, like, you've got the whole rest of your life to do this.
And you
like,
can
you're 18 years old.
And test yourself.
Yeah,
for sure.
every
but
now
go
and
slow.
then.
It was probably the best thing that ever happened in my career was when I first started. I wanted to do that, and I wanted to get on everything. And Ray Cox, Travis Finley was slinging shanks, and he actually learned and lived with Ray.
Yeah.
And Ray, I lived with Jim Shoulders.
Yeah.
And traveled with him.
Yeah.
But Ray always told me, he's like, look, I will help you, but you're gonna do what I say. And when I tell you can go rodeo, then you can go rodeo, and I'm going to tell you who to go with.
Right.
And I spent probably a year where he would tell me what bulls to get on, and he developed me as a rider. And when I got to a certain point, he said, okay, now you can go rodeo, but you have to go with these guys. And so I went with Brent Mins and Caleb Rule. If you're around Illinois or Missouri, those people would know who those guys are, Matt Weary's. And so I kind of went with them, and I learned how to rodeo at that point, you know, but it was a slow process.
Right.
And I think if I would have went the other way, I don't think I would have developed as quickly. You know, in 4 years, I was able to make it on tour, which is quick. However, it was very slow to start.
Right.
And I think that's what people don't realize.
Yeah, I mean, and I think once you get to the point where, like, you're dominating jump kickers in tennis shoes and you're, like, picking your spots to get off, and you know, like, test yourself with that better bull, you know, first, or, you know, like, you know, get on those better bulls. Because when you get to the rodeo, like, that's it. Like, that's your bull you get. It's going to be the bucker. You got to be awake on that first. You got to react on that first one, you know. But, like, I think it's important until you're, you know, pulling your tail and finding a good spot to get off before you do that, you know, like. But, you know, like, I think going that route, like, go and get on a bunch of different jump kickers that you don't know. I mean, there's plenty of big bulls that just jump kick in a straight line, you know? Like, get on, I mean, and they're strong.
And size is good, too. For guys that, you know, I was talking to Kurt Check, and his boys are coming up, and when we were over in Saudi, we were nothing to do, so we spent a lot of time talking about it, and his boys are coming up, and he talked about how those kids... Its size matters. So the little bulls that could be freaking nuts, these little calves, they would get on them all day. But anything that was bigger, they wouldn't get on. I think that, you know, helping these kids get on bigger stock that's not bucking as hard, they get a better feel. It helps build their confidence. Are you searching for that perfect statement? Look no further than Bluegrass Engraving, where creativity meets craftsmanship. Their specialty lies in creating custom buckles and dip cans, but that's not all. They redefine elegance with an exquisite line of jewelry. And for those who appreciate a little flair, check out their engraved guns collection. At Bluegrass Engraving, they don't just create products, they craft experiences. Visit Bluegrass Engraving today and let them turn your visions into engraved realities. Bluegrass Engraving, where artistry meets authenticity. What's up, everybody? I'm thrilled to announce a fantastic partnership between the Rodeo Wagon podcast and RodeoLife Official. RodeoLife isn't just a coffee brand, it's a veteran-owned business that epitomizes the principles of hard work, dedication, and perseverance in all their products. As an avid consumer of RodeoLife coffee, I am proud to align myself with a company that mirrors my values and resonates with our audience. Supporting this veteran-owned business is not only a testament to our shared ethos, but also a way to give back to those who have served our country. This partnership promises exciting content, collaborations, and surprises for all our listeners and the rodeo community. You can anticipate special episodes featuring the RodeoLife experts, and even a chance to win some RodeoLife merchandise. We look forward to this journey with RodeoLife and the enriching experience it will bring our audience. Join us as we venture into this partnership, fueled by a passion for rodeo and a great cup of RodeoLife coffee. Stay tuned for more exciting updates and the amazing things to come from the Rodeo Wagon podcast and RodeoLife Official. Make sure you go to RodeoLifeOfficial.com and check out all their sweet merch. Hey there, folks. I want to tell you about my favorite cowboy hat brand, Sombrero Brands. As a professional bull rider, I know how important it is to have a hat that not only looks good, but can withstand the toughest rides out there. And that's exactly what Sombrero Brands delivers. Their hats are custom fitted and shaped to perfection, with a level of attention to detail that's hard to find these days. But what really sets Sombrero Brands apart is the fact that they're a family-owned and operated business. Mark and Kendall Holler, the owners, and their daughter Sarah, who's only 13 but already a hat-making prodigy, are all passionate about their craft. They know what it takes to make a cowboy hat that can stand up to anything the rodeo circuit can throw at it. And get this, the founder's grandfather, Polly Holler, was born and raised at South Camp on the 4-6's ranch. These folks have got cowboy blood running through their veins, and it shows in every hat they make. That's why I'm proud to have Sombrero Brands as a major sponsor for my podcast, the Rodeo Wagon podcast. So if you're in the market for a hat that's tough enough to handle anything the rodeo throws at it, give Sombrero Brands a try. Trust me, you won't be disappointed.
Right, and like you can go and do that anywhere. Like especially like if you live somewhere where like bull riding, there's a practice pin every day of the week. And I think it's important to like test yourself on not only bulls that are gonna buck and turn back and stuff like that, but test yourself on getting on that bull that's gonna jump kick, that's bigger, stronger, might have more kick than what you're used to. Like that's the thing is like in bull riding you can dumb it down so much, but them other Roughstock events it's hard. You know, you can't really like in bronc riding and bareback riding, like you don't have like. It's hard to find those like perfect practice horses. Like you kind of, and that's why they say like bull riding is like the easiest to get into and the easiest to start because you can really dumb it down.
It's the cheapest too.
It is the cheapest, and you can make it less dangerous. Yeah, in a sense.
Right.
As much as you can.
Yeah.
Like you can get on bulls that ain't mean, that don't hardly buck. Sure. Big steers, but like in the horses, like. You're not going to ride your first couple horses, and that's a tall fall to hit, the ground on a bucking horse. And, you can't really dumb horses down. Like, horses are going to buck. And it's hard to find a good set of the right practice horses. And we're fortunate enough that we have a lot of those beginner horses that are good for guys to get on their first couple. And
that's not even in Missouri. So, with that in Texas, but in Missouri, I wanted to saddle bronc.
Right.
That's what I wanted to do when I started. And it was $1,200 for a saddle or something like that.
It's crazy.
And there's no place to practice. So.
And then those practice horses you are going to get on are probably going to buck.
Well, there was either buckers or there was horses that were just going to run.
And you could just do that on your saddle horse.
Yeah, and... So I'm like, well, I can go to a practice pen, and I can get on a bull and just do a bucket list thing like you're saying.
Right,
but in Texas, like you can get on some saddle bronc and you have access to a lot more of that rough stock side outside of bull riding.
Right. And I mean, it is a big deal. Like it is a big deal to get started in anything. It's a scary leap of faith, like especially like once you put your mind to it, like you get to a point and like I see it happen a lot, but guys get a lot, like, really complacent where they're at. And they're like, all right, this feels good, like, I'm riding everything, but they're not really bucking. And I think we've all done it at some point, for even if it's only for, like, a couple of weeks. But you're like, man, this feels good. Like, I feel great, but but you're not really pushing yourself.
Yeah, well, it even, like, so the last couple years when I've come back from injury, it's just been a weird spot in the season where the team series kind of was going on. So I came back and I had ACL surgery, so I missed the whole team series. Well, I'm like, I'm just gonna go to a bunch of amateur deals, and I went for 2 months and I think I fell off like 1 or 2 bulls, and I was like, "This feels good. It feels
good. Like I'm making some money.
I get it. I get why guys can really get, But at the same time, like going back and resetting, saying like, why did I start this, and where do I want to go?
Right.
And at the end of my career, when I'm done, am I going to be happy that this is what I did? And some people, yes, they will be. They'll be like, look, this was a lifestyle. I loved it.
Right.
And then other people have a little bit more drive where it's like, no, I'm not going to be happy unless I, do this.
And I feel like I do that about every other year. Like I get to this point where like, like this year, like for example, back earlier in January, I kind of stung my knee in the ground, and I really ain't been right since because like I just kind of like, I don't know, I just haven't really been pushing myself like I was last year. Like last year, 2022, one of the best seasons of my life. Like I rode dang near everything I was getting on, you know, like I was having a good year. Like I was riding bulls away from my hand, into my hand, like it didn't matter what I was getting on, I was riding it. But then like this year, you know, like I stung my knee in the ground, we've had less entries, and like I just kind of haven't really been like pushing myself and having that drive. And it's like, well, I feel good, you know, my body feels good because I haven't been getting on as much as I was last year. And now I'm like, well, do I really? Like I'm kind of been fighting with myself mentally because bull riding and anything roughstock you do is mostly mental, you know, 90% mental, 100%. The rest is in your head. And like I've just been kind of, you know, figuring out what I want to do. Like, do I really want to push myself for next year? Or like, do I want to give myself some time off? And, you know, but the last 2 weeks, like all of a sudden, like I'm kind of like, okay, well, like I think I do like just want to kind of go and hammer back at it, you know? And like the thought of like quitting has only really ever crossed my mind one time. And that was like when I had to have my second ACL surgery, which is crazy. Not my almost near-death experience, but my ACL is what was going to do me in. And so, like, that was the only time that I ever had thought about quitting, and that was just because, like, the way it was presented to me in the surgeon's office was like, all right, like, I can make your knee stable to, like, walk again. And I was like, oh, so, like, that really means, like, I'm not... And then, like, you know, Tandy was like, 5 months after he had done it, and I was like, so like because of the bone spur, like can I ride again? And he was like, yeah, I thought that's why we were doing this. I was like, oh my god, I've been thinking this whole time I was never gonna ride a bull again. And I came back from that really well and rode the best I've probably ever rode. And then, you know, this year it's been kind of slow. I've probably rode about 50% of the bulls that I've gotten on, which is like a lower average than I like to be. So I like to keep my average about 75% with practice bulls. So like if I'm bucking off bulls in the rodeo and I get my percentage lower than 50, then I have to go ride as many, and it can be anything. It can be steers, it can be big bulls, it can just be anything. But I have to ride that many bulls to make to balance my average back out to that I've rode 75% of my bulls, and that's just a just a mental game because like, you know, like right before you get on, you know, you tell yourself, well, you're riding dang near everything you're getting on. Like
it matters. It really
100% matters. And, you know, especially like right before you go to get on one that, you know, you're entered at, and you're like, all right, like you're kind of going through your head, and you're like, no, you've rode the last 10 you've gotten on, like you're good, like you've got this one, you know. And I think that's really important. And, you know, Cody Custer has said it before, you know, just going out there and like dominating jump kickers after the, like riding so many that the next one can't throw you off. And that, I feel like, you know, and 75% I feel like is a very realistic number. Like you're not going to ride 100% of them. Like you're going to have those days. I mean, kudos to the guys that can, but I mean, I don't think anyone does.
I even like growing up, when I first started and stuff, like the big thing that like Ray said was like, when you can ride 70% of your bulls, you're ready to go to the next level. And so I kind of always, you know, took that, you know, and it's rough. Like I don't think I ever actually calculated the percentages, but you know, I kind of understood the concept of like, hey, you need to dominate this level before you move on. And then every time you do that, you're going to drop back. So every time you make that next level jump, you're going to, you know, it'll be 3 steps forward, 1 step back, and that progression, except for a few people. There are a few freaks out there.
Like John Crimber.
But he's been doing that for, you know,
years.
since he's, I mean,
when
he's a kid, he was born into this.
Yeah,
you know?
and he's been dominating.
And his dad was one of the best to ever do it.
Right.
So, you know, you have a lot of advantage for some of these kids coming up that are around the right guys from a really early age.
I mean, and he's just loaded with talent. Loaded. I mean, I just saw like he won the Thursday night PBR deal last night.
7 events in like less than 2 months.
Right. And
I don't. Is there an event he hasn't won? That's my question.
Yeah, I think so. I think there were. I think so. I think he was second.
Oh,
second or third.
He could do better.
Yeah, he could do better. You know, there's one that he didn't.
And that's you know, you see that, and that's exciting. And it's exciting for everybody, but like for a lot of people starting off, you got to understand that's not that's not
He's
the
a
reality
freak.
of it. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people where it takes years of skill
Right.
development to reach that level. And look at Eli Vastbinder, and he was great, but he was 30 when did he win Rookie of the Year?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
He
31
won
Rookie of the Year,
in the PBR.
and he'd been riding a long time,
long.
but he really hit his prime, and since then,
Yeah.
I mean, Eli's freaking one of the best in the world.
Right.
And this whole expectation, like, if I'm not 18, that was the biggest thing I struggled with when I started, was I was starting while these kids were,
Right.
same age as me,
Yeah.
but they had been doing it their whole life.
And I had met Fabiano Vieira last year.
Yeah.
I actually went to his house. Like, I don't remember exactly how it all worked out. Oh, yeah. You know what it was? It was Renato Nunez's daughter. I've known her for like 2 years through social media.
Cool.
And she was actually over in the States visiting. And I went and hung out with her in Decatur. Well, she was staying with Fabiano's family, and he has 2 young daughters, and they invited me over for dinner that night. And so I got to go to his house and hang out with him and talk. And, he, got hurt really bad. And in 2020, I think it was in Stanford at that PBR. And,
yeah,
he can't ever ride again.
Yeah.
And I went over there, and he was telling me that he didn't even start getting on bulls until he was 22.
Really?
And he was one of the best to do it.
I didn't know. Oh, yeah, definitely. I think if it wasn't for shoulders, he would have probably had multiple world titles.
Right. Yeah. And so just listening, and he had gotten presented a helmet because I think they had thought he was going to ride again, but he didn't. But he gave me that helmet and one of his Rockstar bull riding gloves. And, it was a really sweet moment. But, like, he didn't even start until he was 22, and he went on to do some really great things. And, people forget that, like, just because you weren't born into it or you didn't start doing it doesn't mean that you can't go out and do great things with it, as long as you take the right steps and the right precautions, and, like, you work really hard at it. And the thing that I struggle with right now for, like, me is, like, what is my next step with it? Because, like, being a female in it, like, I don't know where I'd go with it. Like, I've won the women's stuff, and, I've rode some really good bulls, went to the PBR Combine, rode a good little bull there. And, but, like, bucking bulls don't care. They don't care about
they don't care
anything. And I've kind of, here lately, I think a girl could go in and ride some long round challenger bulls or
for sure.
velocity bulls. Like,
you showed me some videos of them.
Yeah,
you've rode.
Yeah. So, like, I think it's, like, that's a possibility. But, like, as far as, like, a girl getting on, like, the big tour and stuff like that, like, it would have to take a John Crimber type girl.
Yeah, sure.
And I still even think then, like, I don't know, like, how much a girl's body can handle abuse getting up to that point and then turning 18.
And I don't know. I do think that what you're doing and, really paving the way for girls to actually see this as an opportunity.
Yeah.
Hopefully, in the years to come, that development can start taking place, and you're really laying a foundation with what you're doing and spreading awareness to the fact that there is a place, at least, for girls in this sport.
There's, like, an avenue for it, because, like, and they used to have it in the WPRA. So the WPRA, which is the Women's Professional Rodeo Association, used to have all 3 Roughstock events for women. They had bronc riding, barebacks, and bull riding. Well, they got rid of it in 2008. So before I had even thought about getting on a bull, like, this was like 5 years before I thought about getting on a bull. I was in 8th grade, and so, like, in 2008 though, you look back at the bull power and, like, the bulls that they had for even guys to get on. It wasn't the freaks that are going down the road today. Like, like, it's been over 10 years since, like, that's happened. And, like, the bull power is just, it's been 15 years.
We talked about, this year, because me and Keith, especially in the velocity, and it's funny that, like, when the ABBIs come in, everybody's going to the bull teams, and me and Keith talked about it, and we're like, well, first of all, we're definitely going to the ABBI, because we go to that classic deal. You're going to win more money, less guys are going to ride. You got to show up. But at the same time, 10 years ago, if you went to an ABBI, that they were bringing the buckers, and it was a night and day difference. Nowadays, I feel like all of them buck that
Oh,
hard.
yeah. And, like, when did the ABBI start?
I'm not even sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in 2008, when those women were riding, and before that, like, you didn't have buck and bull competitions.
Yeah.
You didn't have people breeding actual
Okay.
freaks and, like, competing those
Right.
bulls. So, like, now, and, like, everything's a bull classic. Like, I went to, I forgot. Oh, I went to the Cedar Park Shootout Velocity last year.
Oh, yeah.
With the Austin Gamblers.
Uh-huh.
I went and did some stuff with them, and it was a bull team event.
That was the same weekend
as
Memphis. So
Yeah.
me and Keith went to Memphis, and then the bull team was...
Yeah, it was a classic. Like, it was an ABBI classic, and those bulls were competing just like the riders were. And, like, you didn't have that when girls were riding, and, like, now everything's about, bull power. And, like, it wasn't, you go to a bull ride now, you get on tour, you got 20 bulls. There might be one that has a bad day, but they're all going to buck.
Yeah.
When, like, back then, like, you draw out of 20 bulls, like, maybe 5 of them are really going to buck.
Yeah.
The
and
other 15,
you watch the videos, you can tell.
it's a night and day difference.
Yeah.
And, I've seen some bulls that those girls used to get on, and they were big and they were nasty, but, like, they were kind of just trashy bulls. Like, they were just kind of out of line and big and strong. And, still probably a lot harder to ride, honestly, than some of, like, the nicer bulls today.
Yeah.
But,
it's a different way.
But they're not even riding those, and, like...
It's even a different way of riding.
Right. And so, like, if you've been in rodeo and you've watched rodeo, like, you've seen that they've created this new event, Breakaway. Because they don't expect girls to jump off and tie down a big soggy calf. And, I think it's kind of, we should look at bull riding the same way. It doesn't mean that girls can't rope girls can rope a calf, but, like, are they going to jump off their horse and tie it down? It's kind of like, well, a girl can ride a bull, but are they going to ride those 22 and 23 pointers that they're hauling to the velocities? Well, maybe once in a blue moon, or they get on one that has a bad day.
Or one that just fits up underneath himself, bucking really hard, but,
staying right there. Yeah. And, but, like, how often is that going to happen?
Sure.
And is there going to be a girl that is able to keep their hips down and ride that one? Consistently. And so, like, I think there's this avenue, like they do with the mini bulls and the junior bull riding. I mean, it's just, you can get a lot of bulls that look like they're bucking, like, but they're not near as strong.
Yeah,
they're not going to come to hook us. And not that we can't do it.
And we've talked about it, this week as far as that's concerned, because, like, there's a lot of this stuff that from the visual they look very similar, but there's a difference in the feel and the power and just the quickness that it's happening that you can't really see.
Right. And, like, I used to test ride a bunch of 2-year-olds. Like, there was, like, this kind of this little Tuesday night series I used to go to, and I had won the amateur. Well, in the amateur, we had gotten on the bull that I own now, another little black bull that would turn back, and then a bunch of just big steers. Well, I won it that year, and one of the stock contractors was like, hey, and you had to move up to the open, and he was like, hey, like, I don't want you to get on these open bulls, like, because we had gotten on those open bulls the year before, and I'd gotten my jaw broke, and then I won it the next year, and then it was, like, the third year, like, I had to move up to the open, and the stock contractor was like, hey, like, I'm taking some of these bulls to the velocities, like, I don't know that, like, you need to be getting on these. And he was like, how about we work out this deal, whereas, like, I know you want to ride, I know they're not going to let you ride in the amateur again. He was like, how about I bring you a fresh 2-year-old each week, I'll bring you a bull, won't charge you to get on him because you're doing me a favor, and I'll bring you these bulls that I've only ever bucked with a dummy. So they're going to buck, but they're not going to be near as much power because they're young, they're smaller, and, and so, like, I did that. Like, I was doing that once a week, and I was getting on some good bulls, and, I had rode one, rode one for, like, 6 seconds, bulls that were turning back, and there was a couple that I didn't even come close to riding that just really bucked, but, like, doing that, and I was like, man, like, that has now opened my eyes to, like, well, we can get on some of these, like, younger bulls that, were good with a bucking dummy but weren't, like, super rank, but like, I remember they weren't strong at all, like, like, I felt 100% capable of riding those bulls, and, it made me think, well, like, we can get on stuff that looks like they're turning back or really bucking, and, like, but they're not.
Yeah, right.
I mean, to the average Joe, they're not going to know the difference,
Yeah.
you know? And so that's kind of what I've been thinking about lately is, like, how do I get something to where, like, girls can be competitive, can make some money, but not, like, have to go get on something that's completely, like, they're going to have to work for it and they're going to have to try, but,
Sure.
like, that's not completely over their head.
Yeah, and it gives, and like you said, with the goals, you know,
Right.
is like providing a, you know, association
Mm-hmm.
that is going to allow girls to aspire to something.
Right.
And not, you know, get to that point where it's like, well, this is all that's available to me, and I've done a good job here, but there's not really anything that
Right.
would keep me from, you know, going.
And
Keep me going.
the association that I created this year, you know, I have 22 or 23 paid members. We'll only have 7 that are the pro division, which are like the ones that you get on bulls that turn back.
Yeah.
So at least everyone else as a novice rider, which they're pretty much just getting on jump kickers. I mean, getting stock for that is also really hard. You're kind of at the mercy of the stock contractor because you tell them you want just jump kickers and, you know, they'll be like, oh, I'll bring you some big steers, and they turn out to be smaller steers than you expected, and it's like, well, sorry, but if I would have brought shit that would have slammed you out in the gate, you would have been also mad, so, like, you're going to be mad either way.
Right.
And, you know, like, I just, I want girls to want to get to that pro level, but I just don't know how many of them are going to push themselves to it.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, especially, like, I feel like you don't want to be a bull rider until you've had your first major injury.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of girls sometimes don't even really get their egg cracked. Cracked.
Right, sure.
And I think a lot of times when they really get their egg cracked, it's a hard thing. You know, guys can go to that nothing box, that no think zone, but girls can't. Like it's like we can't ever stop thinking about something. Like it's just really hard to, like, you know. And the other thing is like with bull riding and all of Roughstock is you got to be able to separate your emotions from your
100%.
emotions.
It's a big deal, and every single weekend, whether you're talking about the best guys in the world, me and Andrew Alvidra talked about it, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, Jose, guess what? He's feeling everything that everybody else is feeling, and he can handle it and compartmentalize and navigate through those emotions in order to be successful.
Right. And if you've ever had a girlfriend or wife or, you know, have dated, like, you know how women
a 4-year-old
specifically
girl?
Yeah. Well, women specifically, like, a lot of times react on emotion.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that's just how we're wired.
Right.
And like when you get to a bull riding, like, you got to be able to separate. Like, you can't let that one thing someone just told you right before you get on a bull, like, affect you. And like,
I can just see it now. My first real experience with this was when, like, if I look at my daughter, she'll just break down in tears. I'm like, I don't know what I just did.
You know,
and she's learning, like, all these emotions because she's growing and developing these emotions.
I mean, and sometimes I've let emotions, like, obviously, like, work to my advantage. Like, I remember this one time, this guy, I mean, and I get it, like, we were going to his winter series, and I had rode in his amateur series the year before, and rode like 1 out of the 3 I got on.
Yeah.
I mean, the other 2 I rode for like 7 seconds. And then, like, the next year I was like, well, I'm just going to enter the open. Like, his open bulls were really just not bad at all. And I had gotten there, and the first time I went, I entered the open. I, like, pulled this bull out of the hat, and it was like a boy named Sue. I mean, this bull was gonna walk out and kick over his head, and he was like, "Oh, you don't need to get on him. He's gonna hurt you." And he was like, "Draw again." I was like, "Why?" And he was like, "Just draw again." So I drew this other bull out, and it was like, I think his name was like Rooster or something, and he was like, "Oh no, you can't get on him. He's gonna kill you." He was like, "You've got Dodger." I was like, "Well, that's not really fair. Like, that's not the bull I drew out of the hat." And he was like, "Well, I don't care." He was like, "If you don't want to get on him, then you can take your entry fees and leave." I was like, "Well, I drove 2.5 hours out here.
Right.
Like, I'm not gonna just leave now."
Yeah.
So I was like, fine, you know what, fine, I'll get on him. Like, it's not that big of a deal. So I got on this little bull named Dodger. He went out there like 3 or 4 and then turned back to the left. And I rode this bull. Like, I rode him for like 9 or 10 seconds. Well, they were like, they called me for no time. And I was like, no time? I was like, what the heck do you mean? And he was like, we clocked you at 7.9. I was like, well, can I see the stopwatch? And he was like, I already cleared it. And I was like,
yeah.
Okay, whatever, you know, like, I'll... whatever. So like I go back the next weekend and like this time I legitimately drew Dodger out of the house. So like he was okay with it. He was like he normally wouldn't let you draw bulls 2 times in a row, but he was like, yeah, you drew Dodger, like that's the one you've got. And I was like, all right, fine, cool, whatever. Well, this time Dodger like he hipped himself and I jumped off and like called for a re-ride and he was like, he said, you tried him. I was like, yeah, I tried to get off. Like, I declared myself. And he was like, well, you don't get a rewrite. And I was like, all right, whatever. Well, I had told this story to some people. These people thought I was making it up. Like, there was this other girl that was riding, and she thought I was making it up at the time. And I was like, dude, like, I'm telling you, like, this is how he treated me and stuff. And she goes out there, and the same thing kind of happened to her. Like, she rode bull, and they didn't give her a score. They said that she slapped him. And then, like, you know, like, he did the same thing where, like, he wouldn't let her, you know, get on a bull she had drawn, and she had kind of thrown a fit about it and was like, me and Jorden, like, we want to get on the bulls, like, that we draw, you know, like, we can get just as hurt on the dinky bulls as we can on the better bulls. And I was like, I don't care, like, I just want to ride bulls. And you know, and so that had kind of happened, and it was what it was. Like, it wasn't that big of a deal. And I go the next weekend after that had happened. Well, this guy, he kind of had a mouth on him, and I drew this bull out, and his name was Skid Mark. I mean, bull does not buck that hard. He's just really, really mean. That's about the only thing to him. He's really mean. And I drew him out, and he was like, what do you got? And I said, Skid Mark. He was like, well, you don't need him, but you've got him, because that girl had done the fit the weekend before. And I was like, Jerry, I'll ride whatever piece you want to run up underneath me. And I sure enough did ride that bull, and they had to give me a score. Like, I was like, like... So they marked me 72 points. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, this bull got marked 72 points. Well, another kid had also drawn this bull after I got on him. This bull stopped at, like, the 6-second mark and stood there for 2 more seconds, and this kid rode him. They marked him 72 and a half, so it would push me out of the money. Like,
man.
that was the kind of stuff I was dealing with. And I was like, you know what? Like, I made my point. Like, I rode this bull. Like, and I didn't go back after that. But, like, you know... that was like one of those times where I let my emotions like work to my advantage, because I was like kind of mad. I was like, that's bull crap. Like, it's really not that big of a deal. And I'll show you the video, because the bull really, like, they were worried about me getting on this bull only purely because he was mean, not because of his bucking ability, but because he was just purely mean. And so like that, I mean, that was just one of those times that, like, you can sometimes let those emotions, like, work to your advantage. Because I was really mad. Definitely.
And probably as you mature and you grow, you kind of learn, like, when you can kind of let emotions go and kind of navigate it. I know we got a freaking busy day today. But you're inspiration to a lot of people. And,
I appreciate it.
You know, especially where we're going. And heck, for me and having a daughter, you know, growing up, like, it's people like you that have discipline and work ethic and are kind of pushing the envelope and showing, like, look, there's a lot of things and a lot of opportunities for women, you know, coming up in the rodeo industry that has really been dominated a lot by men outside of barrel racing, you know, historically. So it's really cool. We'll definitely do this again. And because we could talk for probably 2-3 hours.
We could probably talk for a long time, especially about bull riding.
I know, and we haven't even really got into, you know, the Women's Rodeo Association that you're really getting into. We'll get into that again, and hopefully, you know, we see that continue to grow, and hopefully a lot more women start to become aware of this and know that they can do it without going and just getting killed off too.
Exactly.
There's a way to do it. So.
Absolutely.
Heck yeah. Guys, thanks for tuning into the Rodeo Wagon podcast. Cosmic Cowboys produces this. Make sure you give them a follow. They do a great job. We're just cowboys. They're the tech people. So thanks for the sponsors. Our partners at RodeoLife and Sombrero Brands Cowboy Hats. Great cowboy hats. RodeoLife coffee is my favorite coffee, and I drink coffee all the time in every single podcast. Anybody that knows me or goes with me knows how much I drink coffee. So if you want a good quality cup of coffee, RodeoLife coffee has it. So,
well, thank you.
Yep. social media tags?
Jorden, Jorden 395. It's pretty much on everything.
On
like,
everything.
That's same name on TikTok,
Heck
Instagram.
yeah. You guys probably have already following her, but if you don't, you're new, make sure you give her a follow. A lot of cool content that you guys are continually producing, and you're doing a lot. So, and this is Star. I don't know if you can see him, but Star's a good dog.
Yeah.
Here, come here, Star. Come here. Come on.
Yeah, there's
Come
Star.
on. There you go. There you go, boy. There we go. She's the star of the show. All right, sounds good. We can use or not use any of that at the end, but I wanted to